this is an act of desperation, frankly, from a deeply unpopular president. He has approval ratings in the high teens and low 20s and has done for many months. He only narrowly won the 2022 presidential elections, and his party lost control of Parliament in the legislative elections earlier this year. And so politics has basically been gridlocked because he can't get any of his legislation through Parliament, and Parliament keeps trying to investigate him and his wife for corruption and to impeach government officials for not investigating this corruption thoroughly enough. So matters have come to a head over the budget bill. The president can't veto his own budget, but Parliament has amended the bill to impose various budget cuts, including to the prosecutor's office, which is Yoon's power base. Yoon is a former chief government prosecutor, and that's where he leapfrogged from into the presidency. So the president essentially has declared martial law in order to try to eviscerate somehow the opposition and get his own way and salvage his own political career. And it really is, I think, an act of really profound desperation that has plunged South Korea into a very serious political crisis.
And you talk about leaders essentially being quite weak, but trying to act in certain ways egotistically, I suspect you would perhaps put it, to try and get some curry favour, if you like, on the international stage, rather than focusing enough on what's going on in their home territory. Is that right?
Yeah, well, certainly President Yoon has been unpopular and unable to get his agenda through domestically almost since he was elected. And what he's done instead is spent quite a lot of time overseas. He's been courted very heavily by the US and the wider West in the context of the confrontation with Russia and with China. And he's been invited, for example, to NATO summits and so on. And he made a state visit to the UK, indeed, and signed the Downing Street Accord with then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. So he's definitely been courted by the West, and is much more popular with Western governments than he is with his own people. And we often see this when people become very unpopular at home. They sort of escape accountability and escape the criticism and abuse that they're being subjected to domestically by flying off internationally and looking very important. But the West should have realised that Yoon is a very weak and unrepresentative figure, and that his foreign policy stance of cozying up to the West probably won't last any longer than he does. And I think now, with this, his days are probably numbered. The South Korean people have a very strong record of mobilising en masse to defend their democracy and oust unpopular leaders. So they toppled from power then President Park in 2017. We saw mass protests of 500,000 people, which pushed Parliament to impeach her and then for the Constitutional Court to declare her presidency over. And as you've just seen from those pictures from Seoul, people are already mobilising in the streets in the middle of the night. The risk is, however, that if the police and the military don't stand aside, there is, of course, a risk of bloodshed. So we have to hope that people in the armed forces will come to their senses and martial law will be short-lived.